and welcome back to the Private Practice Growth Club YouTube channel. If you're new here, I'm Tasneem. I'm the founder of the Private Practice Growth Club. And on this channel, we share tips, tools, and tutorials for health professionals starting and growing a private practice in South Africa. Today, I'm very excited to welcome my lovely, beautiful guest, Siba from Unorthodox Group. Siba and I go back a while back. We both started our businesses around the same time. And so we were in the same Regis office together, and that's how we met. And so it's really nice to reconnect with you again, Siba. So I wanted to just give you the opportunity, instead of me like rambling on your whole bio, to introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about you and about your business.
Great. Thank you so much for reaching out. It has been years, and it's also great to see how much you've grown since those years. You know, you really want people to grow. You want them to see. You want to see people doing really, really well. So thank you for inviting me on your platform. Well, as you've mentioned, my name is Sibabalwe Sesmani. I'm the Group CEO of Unorthodox Group. Unorthodox Group is the mother company. It's got two subsidiaries under it, which is Unorthodox PR. Unorthodox PR is a public relations company. What it focuses on, it puts its target audience directly. It puts its clients in front of its target audience, and we make use of media interviews. So we facilitate media interviews for our clients with the media, and it's across different platforms: television, radio, print, and also digital. So we do have a reach in Southern Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, UK, and the US as well. So that's on the PR side. And then we also have another subsidiary, which is sport. There we manage professional athletes, where we expose them to media opportunities. We source endorsement deals for them. But I think most importantly is that we help them plan for their retirement, whether it's what are they going to do after they retire, also putting together and structuring some sort of financial literacy and investment for them while they are still professional athletes, so that by the time they retire comfortably. So in a nutshell, that's what we do at Unorthodox Group.
That's amazing. So I actually didn't know you did that part about the financial planning, which is so amazing to me. And I'm trying not to say the word "that's so amazing" so much, because I realize I say that a lot in my interviews. But why that is because that is something I've always wondered about, like how, professional sportsmen, especially when they enter sports at such a young age, like some of them fresh out of high school, some of them in high school, and especially a sport like rugby, where the age that you can be a professional rugby, you end quite young. I mean, like people who are retired are like younger than me, and I feel like they look older than me. So now I've always wondered about that. So that's really great. So I think like if there are any health professionals who are working with sportsmen, because a lot of health professionals work in a private capacity with sportsmen, they should definitely check you guys out and refer their young athletes and their young sports people to you guys. But the reason I actually got you on was more around for the PR side, right? So I know that a lot of health professionals are very scared to like put themselves out there. They don't like to be on camera. They don't like to have pictures of themselves. They don't like to like use social media in their personal name. But it is quite an important aspect of marketing, because we are so highly regulated in how we can market our practices. So I thought that it would be great to have someone like yourself on to just give us a little bit of an overview of the power of public relations, what it is, how it can help, and how you can actually use it as a health professional. So let's start there. What is PR?
Simply put, PR is just placing yourself in front of your target audience. The how then comes into it. How do you want to do it, or how can you do it? Then those are just the different components, but it's just about utilizing whatever you can to make sure that you reach your target audience and you reach as many as you possibly can as well. So in the simplest form, that's it. But mostly the biggest function or the biggest tool in PR is media. So the facilitation of media interviews through radio, television, print, or digital publication, which is what we specialize in, which is media relations, basically. So I think, yeah.
So can you tell me what then is the difference between PR and just like being on social media, for example, like having your own social media account? So what would be the difference between like having a strategic PR strategy and just being on social media?
So I think it depends on what each person wants to achieve, which is the first question that I always ask my clients. What are you hoping to achieve? And then from there, we can then tailor make a strategy for a specific client. So that strategy will most of the times cover social media, the usage of social media, and it will also cover the media side of it. But it's just the most important thing is before you even think about contacting anyone in PR for yourself or for your practice, you need to have that honest conversation with yourself. What is it that you want to achieve? And then we then come in and say, this is the how to do it using our expertise.
Mm-hmm. And then what I would like to know is, so in the health professions, those who are registered with the Health Professions Council of South Africa, as I mentioned before, we are extremely regulated. So there are lots of things we can't do. Lately, there's been this big brouhaha because I've got an official word from the HPCSA that they do not look kindly upon using flyers, and health professionals love their flyers. They love using flyers for everything, right? So you are allowed to advertise in the sense that you can make your services known, but you may not advertise the way typically people would market their services to make themselves. So you can't actually have a unique value proposition because you can't, in your marketing, try and set yourself apart from the rest as being better than, or have a better service, or be more experienced, or say I'm an expert. Your marketing must purely be information about what you are treating and saying, this is where I exist. It shouldn't say you are wonderful, anything like that. So how would you say would be the best way to leverage things like media or to leverage public relations in order to make your services known whilst still being compliant with the HPCSA regulations?
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I must say that it's a lot like the tobacco industry. Tobacco, you're not allowed to advertise. So you need to look at very creative ways of reaching certain types of people. And also information gathering must be done in a very creative way. So I was in the tobacco industry some years ago. So I've been finding little solutions to reach your target audiences is something that we're very familiar with. But also, the use of flyers and the use of adverts to the target audience can sometimes feel very plastic or fake or very forced down. So the biggest shift that we're also seeing in PR right now and with a lot of organizations and what we are trying to enforce with our clients is authenticity more than anything. So you want to seem knowledgeable, first of all, about your area of expertise, and how you seem knowledgeable is how well you're educating people and breaking down certain things. So I would say first and foremost, education is so important because even before someone comes and consults you, people almost want to feel like they can handle certain situations at home until they realize that they can't handle it at home and they can't handle it at home. And then they have to go to a healthcare professional, which is also a tactic that we use as well in PR. We give people free advice on how to do their own PR, but we do know that it's such a mammoth task, especially the bigger you get and the more that you see that you're actually getting a lot of traction, then you need that added help to come in. So first and foremost is education. We're moving to a phase where people really crave authenticity. Now, if you see on social media now, if you're an influencer, you're paid to do a post. It has to say paid post because people want to know is this genuine or is this an advert? So first of all, you need to do research and see what is actually going on in the social media world. Do research on your target audience. How do those people feel? What kind of conversations are they having? So there are tools. There is software that will allow you to listen in on conversations. So you're not listening as in eavesdropping, but it's just a term that as PR people use. So there are tools where you can punch in your keywords and see where conversations are being had. So you then either decide, do you magnify those conversations or do you start a new conversation? So, there are tools that even break it down to you as in which region, what age group, what race, what gender. So you can pull those stats. So first and foremost, research. Research is so important before you even start acting, and then you can map out your own strategy. From there, you are then educating people about the area that you're knowledgeable in. So education is important. So I would say utilizing social media is putting up videos, very short videos, say 30 seconds, less than a minute, making use of reels rather than posting if you're on Instagram. But essentially you're educating people, and also you want to educate people about what's relevant. So for instance, there was a monkeypox outbreak, I think made it to the news 2 or 3 months ago. So if you are a healthcare professional in that field, or if you feel as though you can give advice in that field, talk about that. So listening to the radio, being on social media, and just finding out what is relevant, because people don't want to talk about Ebola. Well, I think Ebola made a bit of an appearance recently, but people don't want to talk about the plague. They want to talk about what's going on right now. So you need to latch onto those conversations. So, I mean, we've seen very perfectly curated videos as well. I mean, influencers and content creators are doing amazing, amazing work. But just a simple video where you're on your phone and you're chatting to people and you're educating them, because your audience also wants to feel at ease. They don't want to panic, but they don't know where else to get information from. So you give them that information, you guide them, and you make sure you give away free tips that people can do themselves. Because then people will feel as though, this is informative and this is someone that I can actually follow for more advice, because they're telling me to use something that's in my kitchen in order to help me with my headaches or whatever the case might be. So, and then they use it and then they come back, they give you a review that this actually helped. So social media is a really great tool in that sense. I would also say writing articles as well. If we focus on the media side of it, writing articles. So again, if something newsworthy happens and you feel as though you're adequately qualified to give an opinion on that matter, then do that. So a lot of the things you have to initiate yourself, and you have to be very proactive to a certain extent, but you also have to be the right amount of reactive to things that are happening in the news, because no one wants to hear about something that's not happening. So, I mean, social media is amazing right now. I'd say that the most underused platform in South Africa for healthcare professionals actually is TikTok. I'm on TikTok because I love it. I don't make any videos. I just watch a lot, but it's so informative, and it's real-time research. When trends are changing, you get to see it, and it's global. So you almost see where the rest of the world is going, and you see how you can apply it. There are so many healthcare professionals on TikTok commenting on videos, giving tips, and they've got a great following. A lot of them are verified, but we don't see that in South Africa a lot. I think a lot of healthcare professionals are very scared on coming onto those platforms. I mean, you even get there's a doctor who specializes in editing videos where people are popping pimples. All he does is he just watches, and then he says, oh, this one didn't use gloves, or they could have used this type of equipment to do it. If it's DIY, then rather use this in your kitchen and rather use that. And you see those people being verified, and you see when you go to the comments, they're asking questions, they're interacting with that professional because they are just commenting, or they've chosen the area that they are qualified in, and that's where their content is. So TikTok is such a valuable platform that is not being used. I'm not being paid by TikTok to say this, by the way. But it's also very amazing for information gathering purposes. And it is used a lot by, is it Generation Z?
Yes, Gen Z.
So Gen Z, I mean, they are the next.
And the millennials.
And the millennials, yes, but mostly Gen Z. So if you think about it, Gen Z are the next clients for the next 30 to 40 to 50 years. So you do want to be talking to them. You also want to do that research to see if they're relatable. So more than anything, before you even start with social media or how you're going to talk to and educate people, who do you want to talk to? Do your research, what's currently happening, and make sure that your finger's on the pulse with everything that is happening globally. And that's also the beauty of social media, is that you can't be focusing on the country that you're in. Make sure that you know what's happening globally, and then be able to comment on that, both things that happen here at home in South Africa and also just around the world.
Those are some great tips. And I think what I want to take out of that is what I've heard from you to say. One is that you need to be authentic. Two is that you need to be relevant. And three is that you need to I can't remember what is the third one that I wanted to say. And 3 is that you need to build relationships, which I think is in the name public relations, right? So it's not only about me, and this is what I know, because what you're saying is it's not just about what you post, it's also about, answering questions, commenting on other videos, and being visible in that way. But then you also mentioned, there are many different avenues and ways that you can do it. So you can write either on your own blog, or you can write for other people. You can, share your knowledge or opinion on specific topics. So what would your tips be if somebody feels they'd like to now put themselves out there into the broader public media space, right? And they'd like to maybe get interviewed on a topic, it's Autism Month, and they want to be known for their interest in autism. So they'd like to get an interview on like Cape Talk or whatever, or they'd like to write in like a well-known parenting magazine, or they'd like to appear on Espresso Show or whatever. What is some of the tips you can give for those who are just getting their feet wet, trying it out, and want to try and get those opportunities on their own before they, are ready to invest in a professional company?
So I would say, number one, write your hit list. Your hit list is the media platforms that you want to be in, the media platforms that are relevant to what you want to talk about, to what you're knowledgeable about. And then just also make sure that it's things that they do regularly, because you also don't want to waste your time and you are writing an article or you're trying to go onto radio. Meanwhile, they've never covered that and they're not interested in covering that at all. So just listening to those certain radio stations for a good week or 2 weeks, because they cover a whole lot of topics, you can get a sense then of, okay, who does what? Does Cape Talk have a health segment? Does Business Day talk about the stress of entrepreneurs and how that can be alleviated from, or how entrepreneurship affects stress levels, for instance? That's a health related issue that you could also discuss. So just finding out, having that hit list, but then also making sure that your hit list is relevant to the topic that you want to discuss. And what people don't know is that all of that information is actually available online. So if you want to be on Cape Talk, you literally just go on their website. They are, media platforms, because their whole job is they need to have an open line with the audience, right? So you need to always be able to reach someone at Cape Talk if something happened 2 hours ago and it's really big, it's really important, because for them, news every hour on the hour is their currency. That's how they keep alive, and that's how they inform the rest of us. But make sure that it's very informative and it's something that the public can use. So you go on their websites. On their websites, they usually either newsroom details, some go as far as the editors, some go as far as breaking down that, this is the health journalist, this is the car journalist. So going on those, and then just submitting your opinion articles. Also, if you're submitting an article, for instance, they usually also have the breakdown of 300 to 500 words. This is how you should submit it. And also have a look at other opinion articles, because on the websites, they usually have a tab that says opinion. And you can see the wording and the style and the format, so that those little things don't trip you up. So just doing your research. Also, what I found, which is very interesting, which happened to me once, they were discussing a topic on radio that I felt so strongly about, and I picked up the call. I was waiting for a good 20 minutes, but it was worth it, and it was that was just, I needed to say something. So eventually I got through. I'm like, hi, I'm Siba from Joburg. I just want to comment. And, I commented. I wasn't emotional about it. I gave a good, fair, balanced argument. So they could see that I'm not speaking. So that's also something very important, tonality and not being emotional. You need to be balanced in the views that you give. And that's how media sees that you're a level-headed person. You mustn't seem biased to a certain issue or topic, because then it just makes it a bit hard to include everyone, because they speak to the masses. You can't offend certain people. Make sure that you're speaking to a good majority that's listening in. So calling in and giving very good, sound, practical advice. If they're asking, what people should do in a certain health issue, then make it very easy, break it down, explain before you give how you would deal with the situation. So it's very important to listen to those media platforms. Don't just want to be in there, but also listen because they're topics that are covered, that you could give some advice on, or you could educate on further, even if you don't call in. But a lot of the contact details and the information are on the websites. And just calling in is also quite important. And
I love the advice you also give about, being neutral in how you give your advice or your opinion, and also stating that this is your opinion, because as health professionals as well, we need to be very careful that we don't, for example, recommend specific brands. And, if we are associated with that brand, we need to be careful that we are representing the profession well, that we are putting the health profession in good light. So it's not about you as the occupational therapist, it is about the occupational therapy profession. So you need to be very neutral in that you answer from an occupational therapy profession point of view and not from my point of view, right? And then also, I think maybe just to add to that, as a health professional, it would be important that if you are invited to share your opinion on something, to always make sure you have that disclaimer to say, this is general advice that is not going to suit everybody. If you are concerned, you need to consult with a health professional. But this is sort of the general information that I can share, and the general tips and tools that I can share that you can look out for, that you can try, but do seek professional help if you need it. So that's quite important. But now let's say that you do reach out, or maybe you know somebody who has a connection that says, oh, you should come on. And I've had that before, where somebody was looking for an OT to talk about a specific topic. I think it was screen time in kids or something on a radio station, and they said they're going to phone you a certain time. So those opportunities pop up, and then what I find now, I mean, like you and I, we used to like just being on camera, right? But like I find like when I say to people, oh, will you be a featured practice on my YouTube channel? They're so nervous. I mean, don't worry, it's going to be on Zoom. We're going to pre-record and edit, but they're so nervous. Now imagine you still know you're going to be on live radio or live TV or something like that, right? So what tips would you give to people that when those opportunities arise, how do they prepare themselves? Like mentally, like even if they know they must be, like neutral and share the information, they know this information because it's their profession, their expertise, but themselves personally, how do they like prepare themselves to make sure that they answer well, that they're not nervous, that they, don't sound like they're about to cry? Yeah. What tips would you give?
The nerves never go away. I know I'm chatting to you and you're someone that I know, but I was still nervous about it. The fact that it's recorded and it's going to be on a public platform, you can't help it. I mean, even Beyonce herself said that the nerves don't go away. So they don't go away, but it's just about managing them. But the most important thing is just processing your thoughts. You've got enough time to think. Take that 2 seconds. If there's an awkward silence, it's okay. Let it be an awkward silence, but take that time, slow down, really engage with the person, have a conversation, and try to forget that millions or hundreds and thousands of people are either watching or listening. That part is the hardest, but it just time yourself. A lot of people feel as though they need to rush through answers. If you have to repeat things, it's okay. If you make a mistake, that's perfectly fine as well. I mean, I've seen a lot of news anchors and heard a lot of radio personalities making mistakes. It's okay. Come back, correct yourself, and carry on with the conversation. But the most important part is that let it flow. Imagine that you're speaking to your friend. And in a lot of cases, and I do know that in some radio stations and TV stations, they give you questions so you can prep for them at home, so which eases you up a bit. But with a lot of media platforms, they don't give you that. They'll say, oh, no, we're just talking about occupational health. There's so much that you could discuss there. They're not being, specific with the kind of questions that they ask you. So you need to also make sure that you're not caught off guard. But if you're already in that field and you've been in that field for a long time, just relax. And just answer the questions as they come. It's a conversation. And also just keeping in mind that you're speaking to someone who's not a healthcare professional in that specific industry. So also just be very basic with the terms. So a tip that I got, and I think a lot of people use, is that when you explain something or try to educate on a certain topic, pretend as if you're speaking to a 4-year-old. Because at the end of the day, they need to understand in the simplest sense what's going on. A radio personality or a TV news anchor might be knowledgeable about politics, a bit of mining and all of that, but they don't know as much as you. So also the use of jargon. Try to stay away from jargon. Unless you know that you're talking to health professionals specifically, then you can include that jargon. But use very basic, easy to understand, everyday language. So that people can understand and you don't lose your audience as well. So
yeah, I love that. I love that advice, because I think it even goes for like when you're on social media or on your website. I find like a lot of our professionals, their websites are very jargony, very heavy in specific information about the diagnosis, and they speak to the diagnosis rather than what the problem that the person is experiencing because of the diagnosis. And sometimes the person in fact, I was watching somebody, also somebody who helps health professionals, but in the States with starting their counseling practices. And she was saying trauma is not a niche. And what she meant by that was a lot of therapists who are in that trauma niche will talk about their, about trauma and things like that. But think about the fact that a lot of people who have gone through trauma, they don't even know that that's the reason why they are having the problems they have. So when they're looking for somebody, they're not necessarily looking for a trauma therapist. They're looking for somebody to help them with a specific behavior or problem that they have. And the trauma therapist who specializes in those types of problems is who they're going to find. And then it might just happen to be that it's because of the trauma that they will work through. So like those are kind of like these popular terms that come up in our fields, and sensory integration and all of these things. And it's like people don't understand what that means. Talk about how you are sensitive to touch and it makes you go crazy when somebody like touch you all of a sudden. That you can understand compared to saying, oh, you are tactile defensive. It's a completely different conversation. So I really love that advice. But now the next stage then is now you kind of like, got your feet wet, get used to like being out there. And now you think, okay, I'm seeing that there's actually traction in this. It's working. When people heard me on the radio, then suddenly I get a lot of calls. So I'm starting to get busy. I've got a bit of money that I can now actually put aside to invest in marketing. Maybe I should think about, getting a professional PR company on board to help me be more strategic and get more opportunities out there. If you are in that position, what would your tips be on how to find the right company for you? Because obviously there's different types of PR companies, and depending on your budget and the size of your business, how do you go about then identifying who the right type of PR company is for you? And then what is the process usually when you decide, okay, I think I'm going to work with that, I'd like to contact that person? What is usually the process when you start working with a client as a PR company? What is the process you normally take them through?
Okay. So I think in terms of finding the right PR company for you, you should, if you haven't already from the beginning, look at a healthcare professional or a few healthcare professionals that you think have gotten their brand right. And a lot of the times they probably started off doing it by themselves, and they realize that they've got an influx of inquiries and they need to almost level up a bit. So then they hired a PR company. So with a lot of those, they have just contact details on their bios. There is some formal way of reaching out, or you could just ask those healthcare professionals who their agencies are, because PR is so wide as well. And with PR, I know that a lot of agencies don't necessarily focus on a specific industry. So you'll hardly ever find a PR company that focuses only on the healthcare side of it. It's a whole range of industries that we do focus on. But I think what's important is that also just looking at some of the clients that they've had in the past. Have they ever had a client who's in the healthcare industry? Because that also decreases a lot of the onboarding that you have to do. So I think just that with us, I think the closest to a healthcare professional we've had is a esthetician.
Medical esthetician.
So I mean, with certain things like he has his own page. He does his videos, very educational. He never says he's the best. He never puts those things out there. Also, I know that pricing is a thing. You can never say that a treatment is X amount. So at least we've got those foundations and we sort of understand the basics. And we've worked in that industry and we know what the implications are. So just finding out who has what. So go through PR agencies' websites, check who their clients are, ask them if you're not sure, if you think they haven't updated their website, go through their social media profiles. But then I think the easiest bet would be go to a healthcare professional that looks like they put in quite a bit of PR behind their brand, and find out, it's written in their bio, how to contact them, find out who their agency is. And then just reach out, but then also have that conversation. And I think it's with PR, you have to understand your client well. So it is also besides finding out if they had a client before that was in the healthcare space, it's also, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it's also about, do you get along with the client? How's the energy and atmosphere? So that can be done over a virtual call, or you can have a face-to-face meeting if you're in the same town. So just also making sure that you also sort of understand each other and how you work, and you've got the same vision for where you want to go. So I think that's also very important. So then when you get
I think it's the same as like when clients, you meet a client for the first time as a health professional. It's okay if, you and that person you can see that therapeutically you're not going to work well together, then you refer out. So it's the same thing, I suppose, right? Doesn't matter. It's nothing personal. You just need to have a good working relationship, a good working chemistry for them to understand what you want and for you to be able to communicate your needs effectively. So that makes complete sense, yes.
I mean, for instance, a client of ours that we've had just less than a year ago, we have these status meetings on Monday. So Monday, I suggest something to him PR-wise and what direction I think we should go in. And then, so we have those status meetings in the morning on Monday. Late afternoon, he sends me an email. He forwards me an email. He's like, oh my God, this is a conversation that you and I were having in the morning, and I get this email and you were proposing that we do that. So also, when energetically you are aligned with your client and you actually get along, it makes it so much easier to work and just everything comes together. So that's also very important. That relationship is quite important. And then once you find that PR company that works for you and you think they can take your brand to the next level or they can handle it, the onboarding process is just understanding the client. So we normally take about 2 weeks to onboard a client. We have extensive questions that we ask. So going back to what I said, that when you explain something, explain it as if you're explaining it to a 4-year-old. So, and also I'm very good at asking basic questions, and I will repeat things 3 or 4 times just to make sure that I understand, because normally that 2 weeks is very intense. It's very tedious. But once we get over that, as a client, I won't need you as much. Then it's just about us putting together a strategy, formulating it. But the first 2 weeks of onboarding a client is very, very intense. There are questions that need to be asked. We are formulating a strategy, and a strategy, it's a document that's a work in progress. It's never quite done or finalized. It's just refined all the time. But also a client needs to understand that it is my responsibility as a service provider and you as a client. It's not just on me, but it is also on you, because I need to take into consideration your vision of your brand. And my job is to then take it and make it palatable to the public, and make it palatable to the media platforms, and make it palatable to the social media audience. So it is very much a very involved relationship between client and service provider. As a client, you don't just sit back. Also, this is your brand. You want to make sure that you are represented well. I mean, for instance, a client of ours, we were thinking of doing a campaign with a certain company, a foreign company based in SA. And he said, can we hold off for about a week or 2? And 2 weeks later, that company had a bit of a scandal. And, we were actually glad that we listened to our client, even though we were pushing. It would have been a great deal, but then they would have been embroiled now in this scandal. Yeah. So, the client also, at the end of the day, you know more about your industry than I do. I understand what you want, but you know more. And then on my side, I know more about how to brand you and put you in front of your target audience using all of these platforms. So that's my area of expertise. So the synergy has to be there, and it has to be this relationship between the client and service provider. And I mean, we deal with companies, we deal with corporates mostly, but when it comes to an individual, the relationship is so much more, it's a bit more difficult, because you are an individual. If I brand you wrong once, yeah, we'll do some crisis management, but things stay on the internet, so it'll be hard to let go. So you do that onboarding process, and then when you actually start with the campaigns and you reach out to the media, it's the strategy part of it, the onboarding, which is 2 weeks. We then present the strategy to the client, see if the client is comfortable with it, rework it if the client wants some changes, or we defend why we did certain things, and the client knows what's going to happen. Also, as an individual, other than a company, or even I would say with a company, you need to at least be contracted for a minimum of 9 months. PR is an exercise that takes time. You put in a lot of work, but once you put in a lot of work over a reasonable amount of time, it becomes a well-oiled machine that works by itself. But that 9 to 12 months is very critical, where you are putting in the sweat capital, where you're putting in the labor in order to make things work. So it's the onboarding, it's the strategy part of it, and then you draft a press release. So initially what we do with our clients, whether it's corporate or an individual client, we start by introducing them to the public. So we're not educational in any way. We just introduce them to the public, who they are, what it is that they do. So that's what we call profiling. That's normally in the first month or 2. So after the profiling is done, we then move on to opinions. So what is happening? Monkeypox, what's going on with monkeypox at the moment? Whatever that the client can speak on, we then pitch them to certain interviews. So then they start commenting on certain interviews. And then over time, you see that the radio platforms or the newspaper platforms or the TV platforms actually start calling us to say, hey, Tasneem was on and she was speaking about this. Can she come and comment on this? We need a bit of education around this, and not just focusing on, even though your target audience and who you really want to reach is maybe in Johannesburg or in Cape Town, but comment on global affairs as well. Why is malnutrition such an issue in Burundi, for instance, if they ask you about that? So not just sticking to your own area, but you need to be seen as a knowledgeable person on global issues as well. So they can call you in for that. So you might think, okay, I'm not going to get this client walking in because they're in Australia. Well, you never know. They might just fly in and come see you specifically. You never know. But also with you being knowledgeable about global things, it gives a certain sense of authenticity, that it's not just a sell, I'm pushing myself, I'm pushing my services, but I genuinely care about people's health and where they are. And I'm giving all of this advice on how they can take care of their health, or what solutions that they have, or what they can do by themselves before they even go and consult a healthcare professional.
But what I also am hearing from you, from what you're saying, is that before you decide to bring on a professional, and I suppose this goes for whether it's PR or a marketing company or a social media company, you really have to beforehand do a lot of work beforehand around like understanding exactly what it is you want, like, which is what you said earlier. And I think a lot of times people, I find, as you know, I used to have a digital marketing agency, and a lot of times people think like, why must I pay for the strategy? But as a health professional, surely you charge people for the diagnosis before you even start on the treatment or coming up with a treatment plan. It's exactly the same thing, right? So that information gathering process, it's part of your clinical reasoning. So in the same way as a PR company, that initial 2-week onboarding process, it's like your version of a diagnosis. Like you are now diagnosing what the problem is and what the solution is that the person is looking for. So, of course, you're going to have to expect to pay for that. And then similarly, as you said, you need a period of time, because it's not a flash in the pan kind of situation, like, putting an ad out and then you must suddenly get results. In the same way, and allied professionals should be able to relate with this. It's not like when you go to a GP, then they give you a medication and then you do your 5-day course of antibiotics and then you're better. When it's something like low tone or back pain or, handwriting, that you're going to have to work with this patient for a period of time, and there's certain conditions that need certain amount of time that before they even start to see results. So it's the same thing. And I think what's important to understand then is that if you think of your business or your practice as a patient, which is what I often teach in the marketing module of my academy, is that I've actually created this analogy of you assess, you diagnose, you come up with the treatment plan, and then when you're treating, you also review so that you can, do the cycle all over again. And if you treat your business like that, it's the same thing. And in the academy, the first module, everybody, people want to do all these webinars on how to grow their practice. And they all want to jump straight into the nitty-gritty of how do I bill and what codes do I use? But have you actually sat down and checked your mind first? Ask yourself, what kind of practice is it that you actually want? Because I might not want to have a practice with 10 employees. Maybe I want to just be me. So obviously the way I'm going to grow my business is going to be completely different to the person who wants a franchise and different branches and employ a lot of people and, rent out rooms and all of these things. So there's a lot of pre-work that needs to go in before you come to a professional. And then when you come to that professional, somebody like yourself, you need to be prepared to put in that work up front. People always say, I don't have time for all these questions. I don't have time to do these things. You have to put time in up front so that you can reap the benefits afterwards. So I think that's really an important thing to remember. So thank you so much, Siba. I think it was really valuable information you shared. So I'd like to just give you the opportunity to also talk about your business. So you've already mentioned so many things of what you do, but maybe just share with us a little, if there are health professionals who watch this video and they feel they'd like to get hold of you and find out about your services, how would you help people in this industry and how do they reach out to you? Great.
Well, firstly, I'd like to say that it's actually the perfect time for healthcare professionals to put themselves out there. A lot of bad things happened with the pandemic. We saw quite shocking, and we're still feeling the effects of pandemic. I think we're over the worst, but we are still feeling the effects. But what has remained behind is health. I know that I've become more health conscious and just what I eat, even, like posture. My posture's changed so much. My back hurts even more because I'm working from home. So I'm hunched over office. So there's so much about our bodies that have changed and people have become more aware of their health. So it's the perfect time for healthcare professionals to actually come out. There is definitely a demand there. So that won't be an issue at all. So with us, and in our services that we provide, we've also just modified them to include social media a bit more. Because again, back to the pandemic, when we were all at home, we were all on our phones, you're on the internet, we wanted something to watch. And it grew this amazing online audience. It just sucks, that in South Africa, we still have an issue where data prices are still so expensive, which is limiting a lot of things and a lot of progress going forward. But really, your audience is really online. And health right now is such a critical component, and everyone is looking to help. And people are looking to healthcare professionals for a lot of, because people want to prevent nowadays and rather be cured. So, there is also a drive there. So, with our side, one of the services I forgot to mention that we just started recently actually is media buying as well. So that would be adverts on radio, on TV, and also some billboard space as well. So that's something we recently just got into. But if people want to contact us, they're more than welcome to go onto our website, which is www.unorthodoxgroup. So there's a hyphen between unorthodox and group.com. On all of our platforms, social media platforms, we are Unorthodox Group. We're not yet on TikTok. We just use TikTok for research purposes for now because TikTok is a lot of work. Also, very, very rewarding, I must say, extremely rewarding. But it is a lot of work that you have to put in as you highlight. So you must actually be ready as a healthcare professional, not to just say that I want to do this and fall in love with the end result of it, but know that there's a lot of work that has to be put in prior. But yeah.
And of course, all your details will also be in the description box in the video below, so people can also get hold of you there, your Instagram, your website, all of that. So definitely I will share that. So thank you so much, Siba. It was so nice to connect with you again and to hear about all the wonderful things you do. And I want to also remind those health professionals who are working with athletes and professionals to also just, consider referring their clients, because I think that's such an important service that people need to be prepared for their financial health going, when they get injured or they retire from cricket or rugby or soccer, whatever the case may be. So look out for you for that, not only for the PR side. Thank you, Siba. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much, Tasmin. Thank you for having me on your wonderful platform.